She's just the daughter. She doesn't get a thing. That's what my aunt said right in the middle of my mother's funeral. No whisper. No waiting for the room to clear. She said it like I wasn't standing there. Like I didn't exist. My name is Avery Monroe, and I live in Savannah, Georgia. My mother had just passed away after 8 brutal months battling cancer. I hadn't even wiped my tears when they arrived. My aunt, my uncle, even the cousin I once let sleep on my floor when her own mother disappeared. They weren't there to grieve. They were there to divide. The house, the car, the Tybee Island lot where my mother planted lavender every summer. They wanted all of it. But there was one thing they didn't know. My mother left something behind. Just for me. A secret, a will. A single sentence I'll never forget. Everything goes to my daughter. They say funerals bring out the best in people, but that day, I saw the worst. My name is Avery Monroe. I was born and raised in Savannah, Georgia. My mother was everything to me. She was fierce, independent, and the strongest woman I've ever known. She fought cancer for 8 months, 8 long, grueling months, and never once let it steal her spirit. But in the end, even the strongest souls have to rest. And so, on a rainy Thursday morning, she left this world. I didn't cry at first. I couldn't. My heart was too full of silence. Her funeral was supposed to be a goodbye, but instead, it became an ambush. They arrived before I did. My Aunt June, Uncle Harold, and my cousin Ellie already in black, already pretending to mourn. But the truth was clear in their eyes. There was no grief, just calculation, just entitlement. I walked into the church, still clutching the photo of Mom and me when I was 5. Lavender fields behind us, her arm wrapped around me, her eyes glowing with love. And that's when I heard it. Aunt June, her voice as sharp as a paper cut. She's just the daughter. She doesn't get a thing. They didn't know I had walked in. Or maybe they did and didn't care. Because to them, I wasn't family. I was a pawn. A soft young woman without a spine. Easy to push aside. I didn't say a word. I just stood there. Still. Frozen. Letting every syllable cut deep so I could remember how it felt. Because that pain, that silence, it became my weapon. After the service, I watched them circle the guests like vultures, Aunt June whispering about the house, Uncle Harold talking to a lawyer I'd never seen before, Ellie taking photos of the backyard like she already owned it. No one asked how I was doing. No one looked me in the eyes. I went back to the house alone that night. The old wooden porch creaked under my feet, just like it used to when Mom would rock in her chair with a book in hand. I stood in that quiet and listened to the wind. Then I made a decision. I wasn't going to fight them the way they expected. I wasn't going to cry, beg, or play fair. I was going to let them think they'd won. I was going to let them dig their own grave. The next morning, I started planning. First, I called my mother's bank, then her attorney. I asked for the last safe deposit box entry and confirmation of any legal documentation she filed within the past year. I didn't tell anyone, especially not Aunt June. That same day, I drove to Tybee Island, the house by the sea, the one they all wanted to sell. I walked through every room with a notebook in hand, documenting, photographing, recording. I knew what they were planning. They wanted to declare the will invalid, claim Mom had dementia, say she was unfit when she last signed anything. They thought they could erase her choices. But what they didn't know was that Mom left something behind, something stronger than a signature, and I had already found it. I opened the drawer by her bed. Inside, taped beneath the bottom panel, was a flash drive. I plugged it into my laptop and hit play. There she was, my mother, pale but smiling. If you're watching this, Avery, then they've already started circling. She knew. I made my final decisions after the last chemo round. I filed the new will. Everything I have is yours. You've always been my strength. Now it's time for you to use it. I sat there for hours, watching the sun set over the water, letting her voice guide me through the rage. They wanted to take everything. But I had just inherited the one thing they didn't: clarity, and a fire I would never put out. The house they wanted so badly wasn't just wood and brick to me. It was my mother's voice echoing through Sunday mornings. Her cinnamon rolls baking in the kitchen, her laugh bouncing off the walls when the radio played Fleetwood Mac. But to them, it was a price tag. I let them inside first. I gave them the key when Aunt June asked. She said she wanted to take a few photos for listing purposes. Listing, as in sell, as in erase every trace of what Mom built. So I let them walk through it. Let them step on the old hardwood floors with their real estate shoes. Let them argue over who'd get what. And I watched. Before they arrived, I installed 2 discrete cameras, one in the hallway, tucked behind a bookshelf, the other in the kitchen vent. Crystal clear audio, wide angles, battery-powered and connected to cloud storage. Call it paranoia. I call it preparation. They toured the house like it was a property show. Aunt June even said, if we knock down this wall, it could be a killer Airbnb. Killer. Uncle Harold was worse. He opened drawers, flipped through mail, took photos of Mom's safe. I watched him mutter something like, she must have kept cash somewhere. Women like her always do. And Ellie. She was live streaming it, on social media, with a fake sad caption that read, hard to say goodbye to Grandma's place. Grandma Mom wasn't even her grandmother. They thought I was naive, that I didn't know about probate, wills, estate law. But I had already consulted a lawyer, a damn good one. I had the newer will. Dated. Notarized. Signed by Mom. 2 witnesses. And filed with her attorney. I also had the receipts of Aunt June visiting a separate lawyer, trying to declare Mom mentally unfit 3 months before she passed, claiming she was too emotional to make financial decisions. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just greed. This was premeditated. They didn't want a slice. They wanted everything. I drove back to Tybee alone and walked the shoreline. That was our place, Mom and me. We used to collect sea glass there, she'd say. People throw away what's broken, but the sea turns it into something beautiful. I pocketed a piece of green glass that night, and I remembered, this isn't about revenge. This is about restoration. Back at the house, I started gathering evidence, camera footage, digital logs, text messages Aunt June sent me with suggestions, all pushing me to sign over power of attorney. She said she wanted to help, but every word dripped with threat. I compiled it all into a single folder on my desktop, titled Not Yours. Then came the paperwork. I requested a copy of the deed. Found out Mom had already moved the house into a trust. My name. On the trust, I called the county office and confirmed it again. I wasn't just the heir. I was already the owner. They didn't know that. They came back a week later with a contractor and a designer. I was in the garden trimming lavender when I saw them pull up. They didn't expect me there. Ellie's face turned red. Aunt June said, "Oh, Avery, we thought you were in Atlanta." I smiled, not warmly. "You thought wrong." She tried to act sweet. Said they just wanted to preserve the property's value. That word again, property. To them, it was never a home. I excused myself and went inside. Made sure they heard the click as I locked the door behind me. Let them stand there with their fancy binders and fake smiles. That night, I got a text from Ellie. She wrote, "You're being selfish. You can't handle all this alone." I didn't respond, but I saved the message for the folder. The last piece of the puzzle came in a yellow envelope. From my mother's attorney. Inside, a certified copy of the updated will and a letter she wrote in her final days. It began with, "If they're reading this, they've already tried to silence you." My mother, always one step ahead. The letter ended with a line that still rings in my ears, Avery. "You are the fire I couldn't be in my time. Burn quietly, burn smart, but never let them smother you." That night, I slept with the windows open. The salt air carried something different, Not grief, not fear, but power. Silent, cold, unshakable. They walked through that house like they already owned it. But I had news for them. They were just tourists in a place they never understood. And soon, they'd be locked out for good. A will can be just a piece of paper. But in the right hands, it's a sword. I held the certified copy of my mother's final will in my hands like it was a loaded weapon. It was dated, notarized, and crystal clear. Everything went to me, not split equally, not shared between relatives, not held in trust. Everything to my daughter. But Aunt June wasn't going down without a fight. 3 days after I received the final documents, I got a formal notice she was contesting the will, filing a motion to invalidate it on the grounds of mental incompetence. I stared at the paper for a long time. Then I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so expected. It almost felt scripted. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I called Ms. Denton, my attorney, and forwarded her everything. She reviewed it and said exactly what I needed to hear. We're going to destroy them. The court date was set for 2 weeks later, and I used every second to prepare. I gathered everything camera footage from the house, digital backups of Aunt June's texts, emails, voicemail recordings, even a printed out screenshot of Ellie's fake morning live stream. But the most important thing, the video on the flash drive. My mother, sitting in her favorite chair by the window, holding a cup of tea, looking thin but composed. She looked right into the camera. If you're watching this, they're coming for it, and they'll lie to do it. I knew this video wouldn't just touch the heart, it would crush the opposition. The courtroom was small, plain, nothing like the dramatic ones you see on TV. Still, when Aunt June walked in with her expensive blazer and fake pity smile, I felt like I was watching a villain in a cheap drama. She hugged me. That was her first mistake. I didn't move, didn't even blink, just whispered good luck. Her lawyer, a man with a voice too smooth to be trusted, argued that my mother was deeply unstable in her final year. He presented old prescriptions, out-of-context medical records, even brought in a neighbor who once saw Mom crying on the porch. They painted a picture of a woman who didn't know what she was doing. But I had the original canvas. Ms. Denton stood up, and when she spoke, the room changed. She brought out the documents, showed the timeline, introduced 2 of Mom's closest friends, both professional witnesses to the will, one of them a retired notary. Then came the flash drive. When the video played, the courtroom went silent. My mother's voice, her clarity, her conviction, echoed through the room like a bell. She said my name 6 times, said what she wanted, why she made the decision, and finished with June. If you're trying to fight this, shame on you. Aunt June visibly flinched, but I wasn't done. I stood up. I asked the judge for a moment to speak. He allowed it, and I turned to them, all of them. You thought I'd break. You thought I'd be too heartbroken to think, but I've never been clearer. This wasn't just about money. It was about control, about trying to rewrite her ending to suit your greed. But I was with her every day. I saw her strength. You didn't. You only saw opportunity. I sat down. My hands didn't shake, not once. The judge took 1 hour. 60 minutes that felt like 60 years. When he returned, he looked directly at me. The court finds the will valid and enforceable. All property and assets are to be transferred to Ms. Avery Monroe immediately. Aunt June didn't even look at me. Uncle Harold cursed under his breath. Ellie cried not from grief, but from embarrassment. And I just stood, nodded to the judge, and walked out with my head held high. Outside the courthouse, the sun was blinding. Savannah's air smelled like magnolia and ocean salt. For the first time in months, I breathed. Deep, steady, free. That night, I sat in Mom's reading chair, same one from the video. I poured a glass of wine, lit a lavender candle, and whispered to the dark. They tried to take it all, Mom, but you made sure they never could. They thought the courtroom was the end. They thought once the gavel dropped, I'd vanish quietly into my inheritance. They were wrong. Because what they didn't know was this: I wasn't just fighting for what was mine. I was going to make sure they answered for what they'd done. The judgment had been swift, but it left behind a trail: emails, signatures, whispered threats, and I planned to trace every one of them. I started with the paperwork Aunt June filed against my mother. She tried to get her declared mentally unfit months before she died. She forged witness testimonies, even tried to bribe a family doctor to claim Mom had memory loss. That doctor, he came forward, said he felt pressured, guilty. He gave me a signed statement. I handed it straight to Ms. Denton, and she handed it straight to the district attorney's office. Then came the discovery about Uncle Harold. Turns out, while my mother was bedridden, he withdrew over $9,000 from her business account using her login, an account only 2 people had access to. The problem for him? My mother had changed the password 3 weeks before the withdrawal, and the only way he could have accessed it was if someone inside the bank helped him. So we investigated, quietly, legally, and we found it. A junior account manager who had worked with Uncle Harold years ago, texts, payments, and a slip-up on social media. I presented it all in a meeting with the bank's fraud team. They froze the account, filed an internal investigation, and 2 weeks later, Uncle Harold got a letter one he didn't see coming. He was banned from ever holding an account in that bank again. His mortgage canceled, his reputation in town shattered. But I wasn't finished. Ellie had been working at a PR firm that my mother partially funded in its early stages. A loan that was never paid back until I found the receipts, the original contract, and proof that Ellie used Mom's investment to buy herself a new car, take a trip to Paris, and post all of it under a grief getaway hashtag. Disgusting. I sent the documents to her employer anonymously. The company fired her, publicly. She posted a cryptic Instagram story: "People love to ruin your life when they can't control you." But she never tagged me, because she knew exactly who sent that envelope. My mother once told me, "The best revenge isn't loud, it's legal, permanent, and delivered with silence." I took that to heart. After the courtroom victory, I could have stopped. But the damage they tried to cause went beyond a house, beyond a will. They tried to dismantle the last months of my mother's life, rewrite her decisions, paint her as weak, confused, broken. So I had one more move. I arranged for a press release, an open letter, written by me, published in the Savannah Chronicle. I didn't name names, but I told the story of a daughter who watched her family try to profit off a woman's final breaths, of how greed turns people into ghosts long before the grave. The city responded. Emails, letters, even handwritten notes showed up on my porch. People shared their stories. Neighbors I didn't know cried with me. And one morning, I found a small card tucked under my doormat. It read, "She raised you well and you honored her. Thank you." No signature, no return address, just lavender pressed into the corner. I cried then, for the first time since the funeral, not out of grief, but because I finally felt peace. I used part of the inheritance to start a nonprofit in her name, the Monroe Foundation, dedicated to helping caregivers and daughters of terminally ill patients navigate legal protections, financial planning, and emotional support. We opened our first small office near Forsyth Park. Every wall is lined with framed photos of women who came through hardship and came out stronger. And in the center, under soft lighting, is the last photo I ever took with my mother. We're sitting on the Tybee porch, lavender in the background, both of us smiling. Some people say revenge is toxic, but I say this: it depends what you do with it. I turned mine into legacy, into a voice for the silenced, into a light in the dark for women like me. They tried to take everything, but I didn't just stop them. I turned every blade they threw into bricks for something unshakable. They faded from my life the way people like that always do, loud at first, then bitterly quiet. Aunt June stopped calling. No surprise there. Uncle Harold tried to sue for emotional distress. The judge dismissed it in under 5 minutes. And Ellie, she moved to Austin, rebranded as some kind of wellness coach, and blocked me on everything. Good. I didn't want their shadows anywhere near my light. With the estate settled and the house in my name, I turned my attention inward. For months, I hadn't breathed for myself. I had been living off adrenaline, grief, strategy. I had been fighting to honor her, and I did. But now I needed to figure out who I was. It started slowly. I repainted the porch, kept it lavender. I donated half of my mom's clothes to women's shelters, but kept her scarves. She had hundreds of them, each with stories I wasn't ready to let go of. And every Sunday I wrote her letters, not to be sent, not to be read, just to say what I couldn't say at the end. I'd leave them in a wooden box by her favorite reading chair. Then, one day, I got a phone call. A woman named Teresa, from a local law firm. She said her client, a woman dying of ALS, had heard about the Monroe Foundation and wanted legal help setting up a trust for her daughter. She asked if I'd come speak with her. I drove over that same afternoon. When I walked in, I saw a woman no older than 50, thin, frail, but with eyes like steel. Her name was Maria. She couldn't speak much, but she held my hand and cried. And then, slowly, she whispered, "Make sure she doesn't have to fight like you did." I did. I helped Maria create a full legal plan, connected her daughter to grief counselors, and walked them through every document. 2 months later, Maria passed away. At her funeral, her daughter hugged me and said, "She called you her light." I broke down. That's when I knew this wasn't just my story anymore. This was a movement. The Monroe Foundation grew faster than I expected. Women across the state reached out, daughters, nieces, partners, all fighting their own battles against families who tried to silence them. We built a network, legal aid, counseling, grants, and every time I won a case or gave someone the words their mother couldn't, I felt Mom's presence stronger than ever. But the moment that sealed everything came 1 year after the funeral. I held a memorial on Tybee Island, small. Just a few close friends, volunteers, and women I'd helped that year. We sat in a circle on the sand, surrounded by lavender and lanterns. Each woman shared a story of loss, of pain, of power. When it was my turn, I stood up barefoot, holding the same sea glass my mom and I had collected, and I said, "They tried to erase her. But every time they lied, I told the truth louder. Every time they stole, I built. And when they tried to silence her memory, I turned it into a legacy." We released the lanterns into the sky. They drifted upward like whispers, and I knew, in that moment, the battle was done. Not because they surrendered, but because I no longer needed their defeat to define my victory. Months passed. The house became more than just shelter. It became headquarters, refuge, symbol. The front porch always smelled like lavender. The wind always carried memories. And one evening, while watering the garden, a little girl from next door walked up to me. She was holding a pink notebook. She said, "My mommy said you help people. Can you help me write a story about my grandma?" I knelt down and said, "Only if I get to read it first." She smiled, and that was it. The next generation, already ready to speak. You see, revenge was never the ending, it was the ignition. It sparked a fire that gave others warmth, light, courage. I didn't just protect what was mine, I multiplied it. So when people ask me now, "How did you survive all that?" I tell them, because I stopped surviving. I started building, one brick of truth at a time. And when they ask if I'd do it all again, I say, yes. 1,000 times. Yes. Not for the estate, not even for justice, but for every woman who thinks she has to stay silent. I speak, so she never has to.